Sequels give developers a chance to take what was already great before and greatly expand upon it to the point where it could potentially even make its prior installment seem like it's a much weaker entry in comparison. On top of improving what's already there, they also like to experiment with new ideas that the series hasn't ever seen before. This could end in disaster, of course, but it's also led to some really awesome sequels. Spyro 2 added tons of new mechanics and moves, along with many more cutscenes throughout the game. Portal 2 took the first game and basically made it absolutely 100% inferior. It's bigger, longer, has a more interesting plot, new mechanics, I could go on and on. These are both excellent examples of taking what was and creating new ideas and such stemming directly from it. About a year ago, I started off my Ratchet Clank marathon of sorts with a review of the first game in the series, promising I'd be continuing the marathon soon. And I was completely wrong about that. I had tons of issues with my footage, I lost half of it, spent a month trying to fix it to no avail. This video was really hell to make. This part's unscripted, but yeah, it was not a fun experience. Many technical issues. So I put the video on hold and I just kind of stopped making videos for a while. And then I started making videos again, and I decided to just make this one later. And here we are now. It's been a long time coming. Again, I'm really sorry. There were, I don't even know, many exporting issues with my Game Capture HD software. I basically had to screen record from my computer half of my footage with OBS because it's an unsupported file type by my editor that I accidentally exported in from my Game Capture. So, yeah, it was not fun. Would not recommend. Make sure if you're making these types of videos with your Game Capture HD that you let it properly export and that you don't go into the actual game capture files and stuff and get the video there because you messed up. I'm gonna make sure I don't do this crap again. I'm sorry, I promise. But the video's finally here, so I hope you guys like it. Anyway, while I do love the first game quite a lot, since it's very fun, charming, and has a very special place in my heart, there were a couple of small issues piled on top of one another that caused a bit of annoyance. So, while it is still my second favorite game in the series, it's sort of a clunk fest in a few aspects. And that's the beauty of a sequel, to tie back into that. Developers can finally perfect what they previously established. In the case of the Ratchet & Clank series, Insomniac Games attempted to do just that. So, just about a year after the first game released, becoming an instant PS2 hit, they put out Ratchet & Clank Going Commando, also known as Ratchet & Clank Locked and Loaded in PAL regions because, I don't know guys, is the subtitle Going Commando just too offensive over there? Admittedly, however, this would be the beginning of Insomniac's streak with innuendous subtitles that they used for many of the later Ratchet & Clank games. This became a staple, man, and I just love them. They're so stupid, and they're just, like, fun, and, like, it's funny. Size matters. In Japan, they actually just called it Ratchet & Clank 2. The cover art for the game would be the beginning of their manga-styled cover art for the Ratchet & Clank series. This box art is so goofy, man. I'd love to collect all the Japanese versions someday. Anyway, being a sequel to the original game, Insomniac used this as a sort of testing ground. They'd introduce things that had become series mainstays and appear in every single subsequent Ratchet game. And they also introduced things that nobody really cared about, so they stripped away in later entries, for the most part. Regardless, Going Commando unarguably added tons of new features in an attempt to further flesh out the gameplay. So, it was a very important turning point in the series. It took it from a simpler space adventure featuring a furry creature and his little robot companion, who had a couple of sci-fi weapons, to a more destructive than ever killing spree, where you take down an evil, money-grubbing corporation who doesn't care about the safety of the galaxy and its strange inhabitants. Before we get into it, I'll once again mention that I'm playing this on the PS3 HD Trilogy version. Due to the game's upscale, just like the prior game, there are some weird animations not meant to be in frame due to the original release's 4:3 aspect ratio. On top of this, there's this weird thing where Ratchet's helmet floats above his head in the real-time cutscenes. I really don't know how they messed that up, but whatever. It is fine in the pre-rendered cutscenes, obviously, since you can't really upscale those, but it is still kind of weird anyway that they messed this up. Like, it's very simple. Can't you just fix this or something? Like, how did this even happen? Anyway, I guess we should go ahead and get into it. Continuing the Ratchet & Clank marathon, we'll now be taking a look at the second game in the series, Ratchet & Clank Going Commando. The game opens up with a broadcast called Behind the Hero. In this episode, Ratchet and Clank are interviewed about their last adventure in the previous game, in which they defeated Chairman Drek and saved the Solana Galaxy.
Well, as you can imagine, we've been pretty busy. After Drek's defeat, there were parades, press conferences, fancy dress balls.
And the wiener roast at Al's.
Oh yeah, that.
Now, three things are pretty clear simultaneously right off the bat coming from the first game. For one thing, the duo has seemingly gotten much lazier over time. Ratchet in particular makes it clear that he hasn't had anything to do lately.
I guess no one needs a hero right now.
Secondly, you'll notice that the classic asshole Ratchet from the first game is 100% gone, and that he's finally grown to be more mature right off the bat. This makes total sense, because of the character arc that I mentioned in the last video that established Ratchet as more of a do-gooder, rather than an asshole. And lastly, Ratchet's voice. So, I never mentioned this in the last video, but Ratchet was voiced by Mikey Kelly. However, in the second game onward, all the way up until this very day, still, James Arnold Taylor would voice him, who's had many more notable roles than Mikey Kelly, from what I could tell. In my eyes, while I think Mikey Kelly's voice in the first game was totally fine, James Arnold Taylor's voice is much more fitting for Ratchet, so I'm glad they made the switch for the sequel. Also, they voiced alongside each other in some shitty Club Penguin TV special, and I just find that kinda amusing. Ratchet and Clank are finding themselves without anything to do anymore. Until some guy watching the broadcast somehow teleports them onto his ship. Is this legal? We learn his name is Mr. Fizzwidget, who's the founder of the company Megacorp. This company acts as the Gadgetron of this game, providing Ratchet with some weapons and gadgets. He's hoping to get help from the two to get back his cute and cuddly little Furby thing called the Experiment. It was stolen by this criminal dude, apparently. Clank doesn't really want to get involved at first, however, so he's actually given a luxurious apartment to live in, while Ratchet puts on his armor, gets a blaster and some bomb explodey gun, and infiltrates a ship in the Bogon Galaxy. This is where the adventure to find the fuzzy little thing begins, and it's really not the only motive throughout the game. This is very comparable to the last game, in which Ratchet and Clank were interested in both Quark and Drek at different points throughout the story. A notable group of people is Thugs for Less, who are essentially hireable thug guys with blasters and helicopters and shit. They work for this guy who's got some pretty entertaining scenes throughout the game.
Oh yeah? Well, you can kiss you know what I mean. Dang it.
We find out that the thief actually hired them to keep people from Megacorp off of their back. Ratchet continues his adventure, collecting clues, and eventually even recruiting Clank to come along with him on his journey after he's kidnapped for a brief period of time. Just like the last game, we come across many strange inhabitants of the Bogon Galaxy. Some of them are just there to be funny, which I'm quite fond of. Some of them, like the last game, will ask for bolts. This even includes computers.
What? Now even the computers are charging us?
There's also this douchebag who asks for 40,000 bolts, more than any other NPC in either game so far, and then he just goes ahead and eats your bolts. What a dick. The commercials you see advertising something for each new planet you get the coordinates to are just as funny as before. They really give you an idea of what the weird galaxy you're in now is like. Megacorp takes center stage as the company that essentially provides everything. It becomes clear on planet Barlow that Gadgetron was indeed in the Bogon Galaxy at some point, but the sign that's falling apart on the distant building in the level's opening shot is clear symbolism of Megacorp's absolute power in the galaxy. Even Gadgetron, which was established in the last game to be integral to the Solana Galaxy and its inhabitants. Just like the last game, with the two of them naively stepping into a world they hadn't seen prior, the pair is thrusted into this galaxy with no real idea of what to expect, besides actually getting an opportunity to get off of their asses and go do something again. It's a pretty good setup for the game, having the thief and some other side story stuff become more and more relevant as the game goes on. Would I say it's as good as the first games, with the two of them meeting and growing over the course of the game? No, but it isn't too far off. While seeming to be a fine company at first, providing Ratchet with his amazing arsenal, Megacorp becomes more corrupt as the game goes on, and Mr. Fizzwidget continues to act strange. They end up renaming the experiment to the Proto-Pet, marketing it as a lovable, cute little pet. However, it proves to be a ravenous little mutant of a thing, repopulating by simply opening its mouth and showing to have a bloodthirsty nature as it eats 2 scientists alive, as well as kicks this little kid's ass right here. Look at this shit, man. Look at this. They're trying to sell this. The Protopet is yet another obstacle in the way of Ratchet & Clank that they aim to take out. Overall, the characters are just as, if not more likable than the ones from the first game, and the story is a bit less engaging, yet still pretty good. That's fine enough for me. Now all that we've got to talk about is all the environmental and gameplay related stuff. Which, yeah, there's quite a lot to talk about. While the interactions in the Ratchet & Clank games are very entertaining, the series can basically be boiled down to a planet-hopping, third-person shooter platformer action game, I guess. I don't know what other genres, I guess that's it. So, of course, we've got to talk about that planet design. I had a lot of praise for the level design in the original, and I thankfully feel the same about Ratchet 2. Hell, I'd even go as far as to say I like the planets a decent bit more. They are a bit more linear than before, but each planet, besides the ones accompanying a boss fight, usually have 2 or so paths to take. The planets have this way of captivating me like no other levels have in any other platformers, because you'll be doing cool shit like this, and this. But we'll get into that once we get into the new mechanics and stuff. Oh, but I've got to talk about my top 3 favorite planets. Let's start with Todano. I don't know how to pronounce these planet names, just gonna freaking say whatever. It's this cool looking grassy area accompanied by a few facilities. One of which you find this gun that turns enemies into sheep. What the f***, dude? You get to go on this little tour, you get a little skill point for keeping the tourists safe from the mutant squirrels in the area. You can hit these rockets individually, hit the last one to get a skill point, watch it fly into the air and disappear into space, presumably, and then later on in the level, watch it crash down and destroy this robot enemy. Amazing. I love this fun little touch, always been a favorite of mine. Dodano's just a really fun planet all around. Another one of my favorite planets is Bolden. It's where the game really starts to pick up in difficulty quite a bit in my opinion. The enemies are tougher and checkpoints are a bit further and fewer between than usual. We can't forget the parts where you literally walk on the sides of buildings and shoot down thugs sideways. This is just cool as hell. Whoever came up with this 18 years ago needs a raise, dude. And of course, probably my favorite planet, Demoiselle. Firstly, the planet name and city name is a play on words. Since they're dealing with a lot of issues down there, clearly, the name Demoiselle is like damsel, like damsel in distress. And the city name, All Gone City. The city's in ruin, soon to be all gone. And there's explosions and protopets everywhere, and it's gonna be all gone, unless you come to save the day. We also cannot forget this part. You grind on these rails and jump onto and between teleporting trains. Cool shit, dude. How could you not love this planet? Let's move away from the awesome stuff and touch upon a fun little piece of history. In one of the more infamous levels near the end of the game, you can encounter these Yeti enemies that will absolutely beat your ass because holy shit, look at how many spawn at once. This level was actually coded in 3 days. 3 days, dude, just so they could meet a deadline. It was done by developer Tony Garcia, who is known to be able to code things pretty quickly. He talked about it on a podcast with Mike Stout, another former Insomniac developer. Because of this incredibly infamous enemy, it started something on Insomniac Games called the Snow Beast Award, awarded to the developer who created the most tedious part of their game.
So, he thought it was funny that everybody hated the Snow Beast, and that I had gotten tired of everybody hating the Snow Beast. And so I don't know how he did this. The only explanation is that he's monstrously talented. But he went to the artist and requested, and this was well into development of Ratchet & Clank going Commando. I think we had already finished Ratchet & Clank 3.
Yeah.
Because it established the rule of how the Snow Beast Award got given. But he went to the artists and found and asked and requested the original model for the Snow Beast, took it home, and sculpted an award just on his own.
Yeah, he sculpted a Snow Beast on a plaque, and he gave it to Tony.
That's right.
And then set the rules from then on about how the Snow Beast.
It was the Snow Beast Award, and I had won the inaugural Snow Beast Award for creating the worst thing that had actually shipped in the game.
Right.
And that is what the award was given for the person who had the dubious honor of actually shipping the worst feature in the game.
They actually gave 4 of these out over the course of the next few years by writing their name on the statue, with one of them of course going to Tony. Admittedly, for a level made in 3 days, it's pretty incredible just how good it turned out. While undeniably tedious in-game, it's still pretty funny with the story attached to it. It's time, once again, to talk about the most important part, the gameplay. And oh boy, they basically took everything that was great about the original's gameplay and built upon it, while smoothing out some of the clunkier areas. For example, strafing is finally here, so you won't be awkwardly running around in circles just trying to land a shot on enemies. This is an absolute game changer, so it's no surprise that this would appear in, to my knowledge, every subsequent Ratchet game. Except the mobile games, I guess, but they're not even available anymore, so who cares. They of course also added XP that you get for defeating enemies. This will contribute toward leveling up your maximum nanotech, as well as upgrading your weapons to change their shape, what they do, their damage output, etc. Once again, this is an insanely good addition that'd appear again and again throughout the series following this game. So the bolts are, once again, currency, but for some reason now they're shiny gold, and the once gold bolts are now platinum. Interesting change, but not a big deal. I suspect it's maybe to make the normal bolts stick out more, since they're a much different color than most of the environment and glow a bit. The platinum bolts this time around are used to upgrade your weapons and add little mods and stuff to them, which you get from this very shady dude named Slim Cognito. He's a pretty fun character.
Put it in the slot. The weapon you want modified, put it in the slot.
Oh, I get it.
You guys remember the hoverboarding from the first game? It was fine, although kind of clunky, and feels very slow when you don't have any boost. The hover bike is Ratchet 2's version of this, and it's quite a bit better. There's weapons now, they're far more fast-paced. It reminds me of F-Zero. Is it perfect? No, but I never find myself not having fun during these. Super Mario Galaxy, released on the Wii in 2007, you know, with those spherical planets and stuff. But let's rewind 4 years and take a look at Ratchet & Clank going Commando. There's only 3 of these spherical planetoid sections throughout the game, 2 of which being for Giant Clank, but they're still pretty damn cool to see on the PS2. Take that, Mario. And speaking of that, Giant Clank. This was a very minor mechanic that appeared in the first game. He was very slow, but the points during which you played as him were quite short-lived. In Ratchet & Clank 2, they upped the speed, gave him faster attacks. Yeah, basically they just made him not slow as hell. While not super fun, these missions are still pretty alright. The second one even gives you the Mapper, a returning item from the first game that allows you to see secrets marked by green on your map. That's not the only cool little item hidden throughout the world though. Just like the last game, there's a fair share of that, arguably even more so. On planet Todano, you can find this Captain Cork fanatic. You know, that washed up asshole from the first game? He'll trade you an armor magnetizer for some Cork merchandise. This item is essentially like the bolt grabber from the first game, allowing you to pick up bolts within a wider range. So, later on in the game, when you get to this ship on planet Eranos, you can find the plumber here fixing some pipe when he finds a Captain Cork action figure that someone flushed. This is a continuation of a gag we'll see throughout the series again and again. The plumber conveniently being everywhere. He even hints at him being present in the next game.
There you go, pal. See you in another year or so.
What did he mean by that?
Anyway, you bring the disgusting figure, probably covered in fecal matter, to the dude. My favorite little quest item though is the box breaker. So, on one of the very first planets, Uzla, you may notice this ramp that looks suspiciously similar to the Magna Boot rails from the first game. If you come back later once you actually get him again, you can go down this pipe and fight this thing. It's actually the full version of this first pathetic boss fight you encounter on your first visit here. So, you kill it, hopping from lily pad to lily pad, and there you go, box breaker. What does it do? Well, stand near any breakable and do a Speaking of boss battles, they're back. And just like before, they're nothing special. It's honestly the biggest disappointment for me with this game. Because bosses centered around the game's mechanics and having a huge arsenal at your disposal should be really fun. But the bosses range from just alright to absolute shit. I'm specifically referring to this giant mech you fight on planet Snivelac. It's literally a 15-minute long turret section. The scale of this fight is kinda cool, but besides that, this fight is easily, no contest, the lowest point of the entire game. Thankfully, it's a low point of a game with an incredible amount of high points. Also, if you really don't care, you can clip through this wall here and take out your sheep gun, hold down circle for a minute, go to the cutscene trigger, and yeah, there you go. I actually usually do this on my main standard playthrough, so I don't have to deal with the boss. But obviously, I have to look at the game fairly for this review. Ratchet now also has sets of armor that decrease the amount of damage he takes. They're purchasable from this vendor here, and they not only make you stronger, but in my opinion make you look pretty badass. While costly, the last armor especially is dope. It unfortunately blocks Ratchet's face in cutscenes, which is a bit disappointing, since the animation for this game is pretty enjoyable to watch on its own, but I think it's undeniable just how cool this armor looks. They even made these statues to give out to developers where Ratchet's wearing it. I'd love to get my hands on one of these, but yeah. The standard Clank sections are back, and like, slightly better? Not amazing, but there are some new mechanics added that keep it consistently interesting and actually kinda fun, unlike the overly slow-paced ones from the first game. Slightly unrelated, but you can also get the levitator from this shady dude who gave you the rhino in the last game. Using these little blue pads, you can use Clank to fly in the air for a short period of time. Pretty fun, especially in this level later on, but it's unfortunately a bit underutilized. We haven't even touched upon the two most iconic additions in terms of gameplay that appear again and again throughout the series as a good way of farming bolts: the arenas and the huge sandboxes. There's 2 arenas in this game, each with different challenges and boss fights that give you a good amount of bolts for completing them. They're also good places to get XP for your health and weapons. They can feel a bit monotonous at times, sure, but blowing up enemies and stuff is still fun, so it doesn't matter too much. And we can't forget about the 2 sandboxes, Tabora and Grelbin, the latter of which being the place with those yetis I brought up earlier. Oh boy. Basically, you traverse around these areas looking for crystals. Whether it's for repairing your ship, getting a piece of a gadget, or just to make bank, you'll be taking out giant, tough as hell enemies and stuff to get crystals to give to this hippie dude. He's one of my favorite characters. You can even find these car things to go around looking for raritanium buried underground. It's a very small and insignificant, yet still appreciated addition. Of course, raritanium brings something else up. Love him or hate him, you guys have been waiting for this if you know this game. Ratchet 2 expands upon the simpler, short-lived ship sections of the first game and turns them into their own dogfighting levels, of which there are 4. Although the first one is very short and can't be revisited, so I guess 3. There's 4 missions in each one, with only the first being required. But you can get normal and platinum bolts from the other ones. Most people hate these because they can be kind of slow and tedious. And yeah, I do get the hate, and I'm kind of a part of it. I'm not gonna go as far as to call them fun, but they aren't too terrible. You could argue it's because I've beaten this game countless times and I can one-shot them. And yeah, that's a totally fair argument. Anyway, the raritanium can also be found from ships and debris in these levels, which can be used to buy upgrades for your ship, and pro tip, buy the fusion laser cannons. Trust me, if you have to go with just one upgrade, get them. Look at how OP they are, dude. You can clear this mission in like 30 seconds, just get them. They're so freaking good. That's just about all there is to say about the gameplay as a whole. There was a ton to say. Now, let's get a bit more specific and take a look at the game's weapons and gadgets. I'll preface this by saying that I won't be doing my weapons and gadgets section the same way as the first game's video. In that one, I covered every single one, which made it overly long and as well as kind of a pain in the ass to edit, since I was looking for footage of specific weapons and sometimes having to set up my capture card again, just to get a few minutes worth of me using the Mind Glove or something. So yeah, I'm just gonna kinda talk about the arsenal as a whole, as well as some notable ones from now on. Anyway, Insomniac clearly aimed to take the first game's arsenal, trash what didn't work, and introduce incredible new ideas to make them more powerful and destructive than ever before. The leveling up system introduced that I brought up earlier is very important, since it encourages you to use all of your weapons rather than just a select few that you like most. Some upgrades are better than others, yeah, but it is still worth it to use every weapon at your disposal regardless of the leveling up system, because it adds tons of variety to the gameplay. How am I gonna take out this dude? I could put down some mini turrets, sit back, and watch the destruction. Or I can get a bit more involved and fire the Seeker gun from a distance. Maybe I can take out my Blitz gun for some close range combat, or just take out the mini rocket tube to completely decimate this dude. The arsenal in the first game consisted of just 15 weapons, but Ratchet 2 upped it to 24. albeit 5 are from the first game, and they're pretty terrible. There's literally no reason to use them, because their damage output is awful throughout the whole game, and they don't upgrade at all. Was this a terrible decision, however? Not really. I see it as potentially being deliberate, in fact. Gadgetron, specifically on planet Barlow, where we find remnants of their presence, including these weapons, is clearly inferior in this galaxy in comparison to Megacorp. Showing how weaponry has evolved in this galaxy is a small, likely intentional touch. It doesn't help that, it still would be nice if these weapons were actually kinda powerful, but it's fine since I'd rather use the new ones anyway. Besides, the over-reliance on glove weapons that we kinda saw in the first game is gone, thankfully, so Insomniac kinda went all over the place with some new ideas. A spider bot with which you could traverse through tiny crevices to open up hidden platinum bolts. A gun that shoots a bolt of lightning, electrocuting an enemy and other nearby ones. A shield that, when upgraded, zaps your foes within range. These are just a few of the excellent weapon ideas we see throughout the game. The best of which is definitely the bouncer, in my opinion. You shoot out this giant ball thing, and boom, it explodes, emitting tons of tinier ones that blow up everything. It's overpowered as hell, and this isn't even taking into account the upgraded version. Holy shit, dude. Look at this. And then, of course, we've got some post-game weapons. I would have chucked these into the post-game section later on in the video, but they're weapons, so why not put them here? There's the Clank Zapper, which is not very good. Sometimes it works, sometimes it just says nope. When it does work, it is kinda cool looking. When you upgrade it, Clank will sometimes even shoot red lasers out of his eyes. But due to the incredibly slow fire rate, this weapon is pretty terrible. There's also the Zodiac. This one is a total screen clearer, turning everyone on screen to dust. Is it badass? Yes. Does the ammo capacity and fire rate need to be heightened though? Yeah. Still, it's a pretty cool weapon. And finally, just like the first game's Rhino, Ratchet 2 has its own BFG styled weapon in the form of the Rhino 2. Real creative name, guys. Looks pretty badass, so that's already a good sign. Hold down the circle button, and yeah, this weapon completely destroys everything in its path. Well worth its price tag of 1,000,000 bolts. I love the sound effects, they just make it so satisfying to use. I like the original Rhino just fine, but damn, this one kicks its ass. That's it for the weapons. Now let's take a look at the gadgets. Returning from the first game, we have the Swing Shot and Grind boots, as well as the Magnum boots, which have been reworked into the Gravity boots. Unlike the last game, you don't move slow as hell while using them, which is very much appreciated. Clank's obviously got his standard backpack items, just like the last game, but Ratchet's got a few new things up his sleeve. Firstly, as a reward for winning this optional hoverbike race, you can get your hands on the charge boots. By double tapping R1, you could fly around pretty fast. It's a shame that the speed doesn't last longer, and the turning while using them is a bit slow, so you may just fall off the edge. But still, it's an awesome little addition that will be reworked in later games to be even cooler. We then have the 4 hand gadgets. The Dynamo, which allows you to activate electronic devices, the Tractor Beam, which allows you to grab hold of platforms and bombs and stuff to progress, the Therminator, which allows you to freeze water or thaw ice, and lastly, the Hypnomatic, which allows you to control these robot guys who could shoot missiles.
Do not even think about it.
These are all pretty cool gadgets that I like quite a bit, but I have kind of a complaint about the pacing at which you receive them. Well, not a game breaker by any means. You get the Swing Shot, Dynamo, Tractor Beam, and Therminator all within the first few planets. This means you get a lot of cool ideas introduced at once for sure, but you don't get the next main hand gadget, the Hypnomatic, until like the second to last level. It has 2 sections worth used on the last 2 planets, and then the game ends. I just wish the gadgets were spread out a little bit more is all. Again though, not a huge deal. Remember the awesome Trespasser gadget from the first game? I think the Trespasser is the best puzzle gadget in the series. It's just such a cool idea, lining up these lasers to the thingies. Well, Ratchet 2 adds 2 new hacking gadgets, the Electrolyzer and Infiltrator. The Electrolyzer is this flippy game where you allow the laser beams to touch the ends of these circuit things. It's kinda fun. The Infiltrator is a tedious trial and error minigame where you try to find the correct path. It's not very fun at all. Overall, for the Electrolyzer puzzles alone, I do quite enjoy this game in terms of hacking gadgets, even if neither of them, especially the Infiltrator, live up to the Trespasser from the first game. And that's all there really is to say about the weapons and gadgets. Insomniac really upped their game when it came to fresh and fun ideas in this regard, which is awesome to see, since some of the ideas from the last game didn't really feel fully realized yet. I praised David Bergeaud's work on the first game music quite a lot in the first video. The unique style that he went for with the soundtrack was so distinct and so varied, capturing the feeling of being lost in space perfectly. He returned to compose for the second game, so of course, it's also a very great soundtrack. I'd say it's about on par with the first game's OST. It's very hard for me to choose one over the other. The second game undeniably has some catchy ass tunes though. Just like the first game, as you blow shit up and progress further, you'll always have David Bergeaud's wonderful work playing in the background. I don't have much else to say, no interview excerpt to show like last time. But yeah, the music, just like before, fits well into the game's sci-fi setting, and gives you something nice to listen to as you play. Once again, we're now getting into the spoilery stuff, so skip to this timestamp to avoid them. If you haven't played this game before, please go ahead and skip the spoilers for now and come back once you get around to playing the first two games. Unless you just don't care and won't ever play them, but I encourage you to skip ahead regardless, because you won't really be missing much anyway. So, throughout the game, you'll watch some more behind the hero broadcasts in between some of the levels as Ratchet and Clank are flying and need something to watch. They bring up Captain Quark's Hygienator invention that was shown in the post-credit cutscene for the first game, and how it's caused terrible irritation in some sensitive body areas. Because of this, he was put in jail, only for him to flush himself out of jail and mysteriously disappear. Yeah, this is a great example of the silly humor in this series that still holds true in the sequel. Meanwhile, we're also dealing with Mr. Fizzwidget being an incompetent weirdo throughout most of the game. He hilariously mispronounces tons of words.
I'm sorry to incapacitate you, but our entire galaxy is in a very precocious situation.
Accidentally ejects Ratchet and Clank out of his ship. Gives them the wrong password to deactivate these defense turrets, so you just gotta go and blow them up yourself.
Sir, you gave us an erroneous password.
Implausible! Unless, is this Tuesday or Wednesday?
It becomes pretty clear that there's something up with him. Oh, and the masked thief that originally stole the protopet that you saved in the game's first act is actually revealed to be another Lombax like Ratchet. She's a chick named Angela. It kinda reminds me of Sheik from Zelda in a way, since you wouldn't have expected it based on her voice. She's a pretty cool character, even if a bit underdeveloped and out of nowhere. It's kind of a shame that she was just kind of forgotten about in future installments. As it turns out, she is a former Megacorp employee, but was mysteriously laid off by Mr. Fizzwidget when he started to act strange, which is why she decided to steal the protobit in the first place, for revenge. Ratchet and Clank team up with her, taking down the Thugs for Less leader once and for all, leaving only Megacorp in their way. You go to planet Yeatle, which is just a fun planet name to say. Yeatle. This is where Megacorp's protopet duplication room is. This is where they're all produced and copied from the main protopet that was originally stolen. They're copied, then shipped out in these giant boxes to this planet which we were actually at earlier. Pretty cool. But anyway, Planet Yeatle is the final level, so you fight through one final gauntlet. I'd say it's about on par with the last game's final level, so in other words, pretty damn good. Both are great and utilize everything you've learned up to this point while also providing the player with some tough as nails enemies. We get over here to the end of the level and yeah, we see Fizzwidget tear his damn skin off. Oh, he was Captain Quark this whole time, huh? So the reason why Captain Quark orchestrated this whole protopet catastrophe all across the galaxy was so that his selfish ass could save the day once again. He basically completely ruined his reputation in the first game after he did what he did. So, to redeem himself, he decides to unleash this protopet onto the innocent citizens of the Bogon Galaxy, only for him to steal this device, already made by Angela, to use in the original protopet to render it harmless. But instead, it makes it grow to a gigantic size, eating Quark and running off. And yeah, this is the out of nowhere final boss. Is it bad? No. Just like I said, out of nowhere. And it's kinda way too easy. And its attack patterns aren't very interesting. But like I said, the bosses are not the Ratchet & Clank series' strong suit, so I'm willing to give it a pass, but I would say that it's the worst final boss of the original trilogy. So you defeat it, there you go. Quark is perfectly okay, and the only reason the Protopet grew to such a huge size was because he put the battery in backwards. So the original Fizz widget tied in a supply closet by Quark is freed once and for all, the Protopet finally becomes calm and cute, and Angela's already thinking of an idea to make all the other Protopets now harmless as well. There's also this robot girlfriend type girl that Clank has throughout the game, not even notable enough for me to bring it up earlier. But she's there, and in this final cutscene we see her broken there after Quark straight up shot her ass. And then we get the most awkward credits placement of all time.
It's okay. I can fix her.
I promise.
Really? Come on, dude. There's also a mid-credit scene in addition to the post-credits one. Why not slap that onto the end before you even start the credits? What is this shit? But hey, it's a small part of a great game. And at least Quark gets what he deserves in the post-credits cutscene, now serving as testing material for all of Megacorp's new contraptions. Just like the last game, it doesn't end there. New Game Plus returns and better than ever, now giving you a bolt multiplier that can increase up to times 20 the amount you'd normally get as long as you don't take a hit. That is an absolutely insane increase, dude. This especially helps you purchase some of those post-game weapons I brought up earlier, as well as the mega weapons, serving as a replacement for the gold weapons from the first game. And they could be upgraded even further, unlike the gold weapons, into ultra weapons. Yeah, Insomniac f***ing loves adjectives. Skill points are here again, except this time they unlock cheat codes. Some of them even unlock some new costumes for Ratchet. There's also some other returning codes like big head codes and stuff. This is just great, dude. Ratchet in a tuxedo? How could you not love this? You can play these silly sheep minigames in the menus, one of which being accessible in your first playthrough without New Game Plus via this cute little prism game thingy. Just make sure you've got your dynamo, and boom, you're in. Come on, Insomniac, make this thing a reality. We have the game Cube, the game Sphere. Spherical! Make the game Prism. Come on, I don't even care if it's like a miniature statue that doesn't even work as a console. Give it to us, I think that would be pretty fun to look at on my shelf. You can watch a making of video, a slideshow of some concept art, concepts for some unused commercials. See what it'd be like if the Ratchet & Clank crew showed up at the Insomniac Games office for a day. Look at some made-up endorsement deals. This game is absolutely jam-packed with bonus content to give the player an idea of what the people who made this wonderful game were like, and what sorts of awesome ideas they had throughout its development. Speaking of which, easily the best post-game feature, first-person mode. Okay, I'm kidding, albeit there is an oversight here where you can throw your wrench against the surface and ascend for eternity. This is very fun for a long-time player like myself, just to see what sorts of places you can reach with this. Okay, but the real best post-game feature, maybe in any video game ever for me, is hands down the Insomniac Museum. You can listen to some developer commentary as you look at some unused models and testing features used throughout the first and second Ratchet games. The developer commentaries are very informative and give you an idea of what each employee was like.
I like anime and shiny objects.
This is so cool to just roam around in, being a huge Ratchet & Clank fan. It's always awesome to see the passion put into these games, and how there was enough passion to have a huge, out-of-the-way museum location dedicated to cut content. And yeah, I do mean out of the way. You're gonna need to have your PS2's clock set to 3 AM if you want to access it via this teleporter on planet Bolden. 3 AM, dude! Well, you could also just use the shortcuts menu after beating the game, or just do this little glitch here, but yeah. Also pretty fitting that your clock needs to be set at 3 AM. You know, the company's name, Insomniac. Get it? Funny. But regardless, this is an absolutely awesome addition to give the player an idea of what the game's development was like. And the post-game in general is a very fun time, giving you something to blast your way through time and time again, almost like a speed run, raking in tons of cash with overpowered weapons. I couldn't even tell you how many times I've New Game Plus through it, but on this old 100% save file I used for footage, I apparently did it like 7 times. So I hope that's proof enough of how fun this game is. So, Ratchet & Clank, Going Commando, took everything that was awesome from the original and refined it, while simultaneously getting rid of what didn't work and adding in tons of new features to act as a replacement. And yeah, I'm gonna say it, this is my favorite Ratchet & Clank game. And since it's my favorite game and my favorite series, I guess it isn't too hard to decipher that yes, this is my favorite video game. Like, ever. This is the one, man. Will it ever change? Maybe, but for now, I'm guessing no. It's a game that does have its flaws. It came out nearly 20 years ago after all, so it is kind of an inevitability. While I'm partially, no, very blinded by nostalgia, since the first 2 Ratchet games were some of the first games I ever played, this is a wonderful experience I'm glad I've played through, even if I've played it like, many times. Probably too many times. It's because of the game's many high points that I'm willing to look past its flaws. Besides only a few aspects like the lackluster boss battles, this game has aged pretty damn well. If you want to give it a shot, go ahead and play the first game if you haven't first, and then play this one. You definitely won't regret it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, I'm really sorry with all the technical issues I had with this video, and just how long it took to come out. But it's finally out, so I really hope you guys enjoyed it. As I said, I really wanted this video to be the absolute best it could be, so I hope I achieved that. I'm very happy to have finally made this video, because it kind of acts as a love letter of sort to my favorite game of all time, and that's something I've been wanting to do for quite a long time, even before I started this channel. So, I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you did, go ahead and leave a like on the video. Have you played this game, or have I piqued your interest or something? Go ahead and let me know in the comments, or maybe even let me know how this video turned out. Feedback like that from you guys is really appreciated, so I would love to hear what you guys think. Also, of course, do not forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of my future uploads. I'll try to get out the next video sometime soon, and hopefully it'll be a bit shorter than this one was. Hopefully I'll see you all again soon. Bye.